Loading. Welcome to Access the Animus.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new video on Access the Animus. My name is Marco and today we're going to try a new experiment for ATA. That is our first video dedicated to the lore of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I've been known for writing extensive articles, so yeah, it's going to be a challenge. Before we move on, just a warning, the video contains full spoilers for the recent events shown in Assassin's Creed Odyssey and the Heir of Memories quest. ATA's insurance doesn't cover for burnt eyes and souls, so you're warned. Also, this video was produced before episode 1 of the Fate of Atlantis DLC was released, and some of its theories are mostly intended for fans who haven't played it yet. And with that out of the way, we can finally start our analysis. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. The recently released Heir of Memories free quest for Assassin's Creed Odyssey has hit the heart of even the grumpiest of hardcore fans, myself included, and it's not just because it contains modern day and First Civilization elements, but also because of the execution, of the way in which the content is presented, and in general of how many things are done right and are faithful to the established canon, while also bringing some nice vibes from the past games, which is just what the hardcore fans are asking for. That's not to say that the quest doesn't have some narrative and visual issues though, and we're going to try and address them in this video as well. For example, the quest is marketed as part of the Lost Tales of Greece, a group of free quests that are part of the post-launch content for the game, which are available at any time for every player that has played a bit of the game, and usually they are available after reaching chapter 5 of the main story. In this case though, while being marketed as a Lost Tale of Greece, Heir of Memory is actually available only for players who have finished the Atlantis arc of the main game, which can be completed at a much higher level than the standard requirements for the Lost Tales of Greece. That's a bit of a barrier and goes against the idea of free-for-all kinds of quests that the Lost Tales usually are, but at the same time it makes sense as the events of the quests happen right after the Atlantis ending. In the quest, Cassandra receives a small cryptic note which actually can be found in the inventory and which quote-unquote contain more questions than answers. The letter points out to a small island north of Samos with a temple and a huge statue dedicated to Poseidon. When Cassandra arrives there, she can find the hologram of Aletheia, the first civilization being whose voice could be heard after bringing the Atlantis artifacts back to the 4 pillars which were placed in front of the gateway to the Lost City. Seeing an Isu hologram and especially having extensive and meaningful conversations with it is already a good element for hardcore fans, as the last time this happened was with Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation back in 2012. That is, if we don't count Juno's head appearing from Assassin's Creed 4 to Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Thus, some AC3 vibes right there. The design of Aletheia looks also consistent with what we have seen from the First Civilization before, as she's wearing a very light white dress with a metal waistband and a metal headgear which is similar but different from the one used by Juno. She also seems to have some sort of golden drawings on her arms, or some sort of transparent suit with some peculiar drawings on it, which actually, as far as we know, was something that in the Isu times was worn by the enslaved humans rather than the First Civilization. Aletheia manifests herself to Cassandra and calls her Keeper, as after she managed to obtain the staff of Hermes Trismegistus and to seal the gateway to Atlantis, she is now basically the keeper of the Lost City, and most specifically of the so-called Great Seal, the giant door through which it's possible to access the city. In Aletheia's words, the Keeper isn't a person but a task, that is to restrain the staff's power, protect it from corruption, and keep it for the so-called Heir of Memories. Thus, while being the name of the quest, Heir of Memories is also how Aletheia describes Layla, the modern-day protagonist, without ever naming her otherwise, possibly because Layla is able to access Cassandra's memories, and by being a heir to them, she'll be able to enter the Lost City. This dialogue is also very interesting for hardcore fans because Alethea tells Cassandra that by speaking to her, she is speaking through her to the Heir. Cassandra even asks where the Heir is, and Alethea says,
"Not where, but when. She is yet to be, but even still, she is here watching us now."
This is another big moment for fans, or at least it was for me, as it's very similar to Minerva's dialogue with Ezio Auditore and brings some huge Assassin's Creed 2 vibes. Cassandra decides to accept Alethea's task, and that's why she kept the staff until she finally found Layla and gave it to her. This is basically the moment Cassandra truly decides her destiny, even if she doesn't know she has to wait for almost 2,500 years to fulfill it. At this point, the focus goes back to the present day, where Layla discusses the diagnostics of her session in the Animus with the team, and immediately they feel there is a disruption in the communications. This is the moment where the presence of the Interloper, as is called by Alethea, is felt. Throughout the quest, this entity, which is reported to be an outside source, interferes with the communications between Layla and her crew through the use of an algorithm that is similar to the ones that Erudito used to perform hacks. The Interloper is hypothesized by Layla in different moments to be Alethea or Victoria, before the issue reveals that the Interloper is actually a he, making a recurrent character the most likely candidate behind the Interloper, as we'll see. Nevertheless, Alethea is able to talk to Layla in the modern day as well, as it will be later explained that she transferred her consciousness in the staff of Hermes Trismegistus in order to talk to her and Cassandra. This should be another resonant mention for the fans, as the issue being able to transfer their consciousness into artifacts and machines dates back as far as 2010 with the release of Project Legacy, with Consus being able to transfer his consciousness into his prototype Shroud of Eden, and in 2012 with Assassin's Creed 3, where Juno did the same in the Grand Temple machinery. Back to Alethea, she directs Layla in front of the so-called Great Seal of Atlantis, the actual door that should allow to access the Lost City. Before reaching the door, Layla and Victoria can have a discussion about what remained of Cassandra after she died while handling the staff of Hermes Trismegistus. Victoria would like to have a sample of her DNA to analyze, but Layla says that there's nothing left of her body. And that's probably a choice by the writers to prevent the modern day characters from experiencing all of Cassandra's 2,500 years of life, and have fans complain about it. Alethea tells Layla that the seal can only be unlocked by knowing and pronouncing 3 symbols in the correct order among the ones that are placed on the locking mechanism, and which could also be seen in the Sphinx temple in the main game. The issue also adds that the answer as to which are the proper symbols lies in the memories of the Keeper, so this prompts Layla to jump back in Cassandra's memories. Before doing that though, the player can have a look at a few new files from Layla's laptop. The biggest one is dubbed Reconsidering Reality and is a document once again about the equations of reality theory, which basically says that the nature of the universe is dictated by mathematical equations. According to the file, the Isu were masters at checking these equations, running all kinds of simulations to try and see how to save the planet from the first disaster. The question is whether they were able to rewrite the equations and if Layla can do it with the staff as well. The file doesn't give an answer, but provides food for thought. If the Isu had known how to rewrite the equations, would the humans be able to realize it? What if the present layer of existence was actually a simulation? We have discussed this so many times in our articles, which you can find in the description. Alana suggests that maybe Layla, by having the staff, has already changed the equations. In this occasion, Layla mentions Rocco's Basilisk, a thought experiment about the potential risks involved in developing artificial intelligence. In the file, Alana also says, "And you are one of the bloodline too, and this is something that I really didn't like because of its execution." Just saying like that a piece of information that is super important, like it was obvious and accepted, is underwhelming and should have been actually part of some sort of revelation rather than something that might be obvious for the characters but not for the players. It's not even clear if this means that Layla is part of an Isu bloodline or the bloodline, as in Cassandra's and Pythagoras one. The other files mostly provide general information, apart from the addendum audio files in Layla's log. In those, Otzoberg makes an appearance, sending Layla a few audio messages. In them, Berg says that he found out about Layla's fake USB key, which according to the main game was left by her in the loft in London to be found by Abstergo when they swept through it. The key was a shell holding an RFID transmitter that, if put anywhere near a workstation at Abstergo, would have allowed Layla to keep tabs on the Templars. Thus, Berg says he found the fake USB key and he's probably reverse using it to send Layla his audio messages. This is also a major motivation for him to be the interloper that Alethea is talking about, as he was able to find a way of communication with Layla, and thus it might have been easy for him to interfere with all the communication with her team. Jumping back in the past, Cassandra finds out about the 3 symbols that the Heir of Memories would need in her time, and is told by Alethea that a man called Theras might know about them. Theras was the man that helped sculptor Phidias get out of Athens in the quest Escape from Athens from the main game. After that, in the quest The Message, the Stick and the Artist, Phidias felt like he was still haunted by the cult of Cosmos, and while Cassandra decided to help him in his endeavors, she didn't believe too much into his fears. That is, until she found him killed in his workshop. Now, in Heir of Memories we get to know that a man dressed in gold, which will later be shown as Deimos, came in his workshop, tortured him and killed him. All of this because of the 3 symbols that Theras had found in the tombs of Agamemnon, Eteocles and Orion, and then etched on a parchment for Phidias himself. Thus, the player is set on the mission of looking for the tombs as Cassandra, and when those are located, switching to Layla and going in the tombs in the modern day to actually find those symbols. This going back and forth from the past to the present, and especially having actual actions and dialogues in the past having direct consequences or influence on the present day, along with the exploration of new environments in the modern day, is another very strong element of the quest for the hardcore fans, who can really feel the vibes of the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood modern day sequences. But that's not all. In fact, during these sequences and after a very long time, we finally got back to hear commentary and especially reactions from the modern day characters to what's happening in the Animus session, which was almost going to feel vintage and that is hopefully back here to stay. One more interesting topic featuring Heir of Memories that should have actually been dealt with in the Legacy of the First Blade DLC is how Cassandra will outlive all the people that she loves or loved, even her family. This is at least addressed in the quest, also with a mention by Alethea that Cassandra will love again after surviving her loved ones, a possible hint at a potential new love interest for Cassandra in the future. In a different dialogue, Alethea also makes Cassandra think of how she would react to the loss of a loved one, and what she would tell them if she knew she'd survived them. Another element explored by the quest which surprised me is Layla going in an Animus session as Deimos instead of Cassandra. The session is not playable, but this concept is very fascinating, even if the execution doesn't really look good. The idea behind this is that Layla needs to know the correct order of the 3 symbols to be able to open the Great Seal of Atlantis, and Alethea mentions that such information can be found in Deimos memories. Thus, in such memories we see what was anticipated by Theras, that is, Deimos torturing Phidias to know more about the symbols. What the team tried to achieve here, though, was to have a visual representation of the bleeding effect that Deimos memories were causing on Layla, in a similar way to what was shown in the Assassin's Creed movie. And as interesting and commendable as that may seem, sadly it didn't look very good, especially for what concerns the animation of the scene.
Tell me what I want to know.
Let's have another look at that, shall we? Nonetheless, I really appreciate the attempt, and it's another surprising element for the hardcore fans, which hopefully will be refined and used again in the future. In the scene, Phidias repeats, just a few times, the order of the symbols.
Itira, Korgath, Metin, Itira, Korgath, Metin, Itira, Korgath, Metin, Itira, Itira, Korgath, Metin, Itira, Korgath, Metin, Itira, Korgath, Metin.
While it may sound a bit silly, this also works for the player, as the names of the symbols will be stuck in their head after being pronounced so many times, and thus will be easier to remember while Layla has to finally open the Great Seal of Atlantis. Layla is remotely pulled out of the Animus by Victoria because the session was putting her life in danger, and this is where Alethea tells Layla that the Interloper, a he, is listening. It's this mention that raises the suspicions about Otto Berg being the Interloper and makes them even more solid. In fact, right after Alethea says that the Interloper is listening, Sigma Team, or rather Sigma Force as it's called in the quest, attacks the assassin cell on the Altair 2, even being able to shoot Kiyoshi. And as established multiple times, Otto Berg is the leader of Sigma Team, so... Plus, having Berg as the Interloper would make sense as this entity tried to listen and interfere in Layla's communication throughout the quest. Also, in the audio messages in Layla's PC, Berg says he knows the assassins are looking for something of great importance. In such audio file, he also threatens Layla to attack her team if she doesn't transmit her findings, saying that, otherwise, he could also start by threatening a quote-unquote old friend from Abstergo. This last bit about the old friend from Abstergo is also interesting as it might hint at Diana Geary, the Abstergo support medic and friend of Layla that appeared in Assassin's Creed Origins. In Origins, Sigma Team stormed the hotel that Diana was in as Layla was working in Bayek's tomb, and while Layla overheard gunshots in their audio communication, it was never stated whether Diana was killed in the process or had survived. Also, in the audio file, Berg calls Layla Habibti, which is an Arabic word whose meaning is my beloved for a female person or object of affection, and Habibti was exactly the name that Layla was called by Diana at the beginning of Assassin's Creed Origins.
Layla, are you with me? Habibti.
Told you not to call me that.
Thus, in a potential twist, Berg might have gotten hold of Diana and she could be the old friend from Abstergo that he's using to blackmail Layla. Going back to the quest, after the attack the communication with the Altair 2 crew is lost and Layla can't do anything else other than following Alethea's advice, reach the Great Seal, and pronounce the names of the symbols in the correct order. This is the final element that surprised me as a hardcore fan, and I didn't even realize it while playing the quest. In fact, Layla pronouncing the proper words to open a gate to a First Civilization temple isn't actually something new, and we have seen something very similar in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, when Desmond opened the gate to the Colosseum vault by saying a specific password.
Do you think it speaks English?
Just say it.
Okay. 72.
Thus, once again, Heir of Memories brings hardcore fans vibes from the past games that are also consistent with the established lore. Finally, after the seal is open, Victoria is able to contact Layla again to communicate that the team is safe after the attack by Sigma Team. Once again, it's stated that the interference on the communications didn't come from the stuff, but just to be sure, Alana encrypted a new frequency for them to use. Layla tells the team she finally opened Atlantis, but quite conveniently and understandably the team decides to go dark, and Layla decides not to enter Atlantis until they can secure the communication connection. Which obviously will happen with the first episode of the Fate of Atlantis DLC, which released on April 23rd. So there you have it, this was our analysis of the Heir of Memories quest. It's probably a must for every fan, both because it's an introduction to the Atlantis DLC, but also because of the vibes from the early games of the franchise that it can bring. What I do hope is that this is built upon in the upcoming DLC, and especially that all of these vibes that I mentioned throughout the video actually turn back into constant and ongoing elements of the franchise. And that was it for this analysis. Let us know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with what we discussed. We really want to know your opinion. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and to click on the bell icon if you don't want to miss any future update. Thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next video.